The earliest memories I have of Thriller as a child was riding around with my dad in a Corvette because he had it on repeat all the time. And that was back in the days with cassettes. So he would play it through and then rewind it and play it through again. So I knew those songs by heart before I realized I knew them by heart. And now looking back on those times and looking back at that album, Michael Jackson's classic album, I understand why my dad had that album on repeat at all times. Thriller is one of the best selling albums of all time, with an estimated 70 million copies being sold worldwide. Some estimates say it's as high as 100 million. It is the greatest album sold ever. It was the first album to go platinum 34 times. And at one point, there were 1 million copies sold per week when it was selling at its peak. It cost about $750,000 to produce, and it came back grossing over $1 billion. 7 of the 9 tracks were released as single, which we're going to discuss later on in this video. That was intentional. And those 7 tracks each reached top 10 in the Billboard Hot 100 music charts. Thriller was an album that turned Michael Jackson into an icon. But let's talk about how that album was produced and how it came about. What's good, y'all? My name is CBH of CD Suthun, and I'm the creator of Suthun Gridiron Darts. As you notice, there's a game being played to my left. This is actually a game of me playing against the computer in real life, throwing darts. It's a way to replicate a game of football while throwing darts. And this is one of the games I played against computer. This one is actually linked in the description below, so you can check it out. You can also go down in the description and check out my website, and you can download the game for yourself. It's on tablets, iPads, iPhones, Androids. And so if you enjoy playing darts with friends, then you can go ahead and look into that and download the game and play a game of Suthun Gridiron Darts, which replicates a game of football, and have some fun. All right, back to the video. Now, obviously, Michael Jackson started his career with the Jackson 5, his brothers, back in Gary, Indiana. They were part of Motown Records. And they ended up selling 150 million copies as the Jackson 5. And he was the lead singer of the group. But in his late teens, early 20s, he just wanted to express himself a different way. And he just wanted to branch out on his own to create his own music, which is understandable. And he released his first solo album in 1979, which was called Off the Wall, at the age of 21. The album was actually a commercial success as it sold 7 million copies. But Michael Jackson actually felt, even though it sold 7 million copies, that it underperformed financially and it wasn't getting enough recognition critically, especially when it didn't win a Grammy for Best Album of the Year that year. Michael Jackson, he had high standards for his music, and he had high expectations for how it was received, how it would be received by an audience. And in 1980, Michael Jackson was also denied a cover story by Rolling Stone. By, get this, people will respond by saying, or Michael would say this about being denied that cover story. I've been told over and over that Black people on the cover of magazines doesn't sell copies. Just wait. Someday those magazines are going to be begging me for an interview. Maybe I'll give him one, maybe I won't. He was tenacious when it came to his music, and he was tenacious about the way his music was received and how he was received in the music industry. He would go on to say that he wanted to create an album where every song was a killer, saying that most albums of the time would have one good song and then the rest would be B-side level. He wanted to produce an album where every song could be a hit single. You see, Michael, when it came to his music, he had the hunger and drive and tenacity of a battle rapper. He wanted to destroy the music industry. He wanted to destroy anyone in his path. Not insofar as that he wanted to tear down people's careers, but he wanted to be the best out there, and he wanted to be recognized and known as the best out there. This is the mentality that he went into the production of Thriller. So with this in mind, he immediately went to Quincy Jones. I would say he's the greatest musical producer of all time. And he had worked with Quincy during The Wiz, and he also worked with Quincy in his debut album, Off the Wall. And he told him that he wanted to produce an album that would be timeless and unforgettable in so many words. And that's exactly what they'll go on to do, even though by the end of the album and the production of the album, their relationship would become strained. But sometimes producing great art and putting your heart and soul into something with two musical geniuses as they were, sometimes that can lead to fractured relationships it kind of sucks for that time, but they will go on to create a masterpiece in that moment. But for now, let's leave the drama behind and focus on the 9 tracks that will make the Thriller album out of the 30 that were produced for this iconic piece of music history. The album will start with the infectious rhythms of You Want to Be Starting Something, which is a great track, intro track to the entire album as a whole, because it immediately gets into your ear and drives down into your bones and your soul, and you start feeling the rhythm immediately, and you're just moving to it, and you really want to groove to it, and it's a great precursor of what's to come later on in the scene. Because this track gave you a taste of everything the rest of the album was going to be, from the guitar riff in the middle to the subtle depth to the lyrics. As it was a reference to his sister LaToya's relationship problems in her life. That's actually what the song was about. But most famously, the track is known for the iconic chant at the end, Mama say, Mama sa, Mamakusa, Mama say, Mama sa, Mamakusa, which was actually borrowed from a Cameroonian artist known as Manu Dibango, which just lets you know Afrobeats was hitting hard even back in the 1970s. The next track, Baby Be Mine, was produced as an homage to John Coltrane, the legendary jazz trumpeter, and also the genre of bebop in general. But for me, it felt like an immediate descendant from Michael's debut album, Off the Wall, because it had that feathery light dance vibe to it, and it was cool to move to, cool to dance to, and really didn't have the lyrics really didn't have much depth to them, but they didn't really need to. It just literally got you off the wall and made you want to dance, made you want to move. The track after that was The Girl Is Mine, which he did with Paul McCartney, the legendary Beatles lead man. And to be honest, I feel like this is the weakest track, ironically, on the entire album. And it's kind of weird to say that when you have 2 music icons such as Michael Jackson and Paul McCartney. But just in my personal opinion, this ended up being the weakest track, though it was immensely successful at the time. Next, after that, comes Thriller, the title track. This particular song, and more so the music video, changed the music industry for all time. This video was so iconic that I watched it as a child, and I was just so disturbed by watching it that it gave me nightmares, and I wouldn't watch it again until I was like in middle school, getting ready to enter high school, just because I was so afraid to watch it. It was that great in a bad way for me. The video itself debuted on MTV on December 2nd, 1983. The album, the Thriller album, came out in 1982, which happens to be my birthday, which is another reason my dad had the song on repeat all the time, and I remember listening to it all the time as a child. But when Michael conceived the Thriller, the video itself, he wanted to create a mini film, which he was kind of inspired to do this from The Wiz when he was on the movie The Wiz. And he was just like, he felt like there was a different way to be able to present music that hadn't been done before. And he wanted to try this out and test this and do it with Thriller. So he enlisted the services of John Landis, who actually was the director of An American Werewolf in London. And with this collaboration, they were able to create a mini horror film. And I think it was like 12 or 13 minutes long. And not only that, but the dance scene, the zombie dance scene has been reenacted more so than any other dance choreographed sequence in history. And don't quote me on that, but you can see it all throughout YouTube. People doing different Thriller dances and an homage to that Thriller dance when he has with the zombies, which is just, it is an incredible dance scene. And by the way, Thriller is actually the first album, or excuse me, the Thriller video is actually the first music video ever to be enlisted in the National Film Registry, as it completely changed the way people view music. Because before, music videos were they were like a visual radio play. Like you listen to music on the radio, and videos just gave you an extension of radio music, insofar as it was a way to listen to a song and then just have something on in the background. But Michael was like, no. Michael made it an art in of itself, and people completely changed the way they approach creating music videos after the Thriller video, because they realized, oh wait, this can be an art form. This can actually have a statement itself. So again, that's Thriller. And after Thriller on the album is Beat It, which also is known for its music video, which I didn't know this until I looked this up. It featured actual gang members in the video from the Bloods and Crips. It was filmed in LA, and those are actual gang members that got into a fight during the production. But Michael wanted authenticity with this video. And the video is kind of about, or is said by one of his brothers, that it was about some of the violence that they saw growing up in Gary, Indiana, which was a rough neighborhood. So, and they will have some gang throwdowns that will happen right outside, their house or their homes. So, and Michael wanted to create or wrote lyrics to try to find a way to bring peace and stop senseless violence, because his brother feels that he was really affected by that. The reason actually why Thriller ended up being a part of, Beat It ended up being a part of Thriller was because Quincy Jones felt like the album needed a rock song. So this ended up becoming the rock song. And ironically, that guitar riff is one of the most recognizable riffs of all, in my opinion, of all time when it comes to intro to a song, intro to a rock track. And not only that, but they enlisted the assistance of Eddie Van Halen from the iconic group Van Halen to play the guitar, and especially that guitar solo in the middle of the song, which is just incredible. I actually didn't even know that was Van Halen until I did research for this topic. And excuse me, before I continue on when it comes to Thriller, I forgot to give a shout out to Vincent Price, who was a horror actor back in the day. And it's his voice that caps the song Thriller that you hear in the background that just sends absolute shivers and chills through your bones. And his iconic laugh at the end of that track is just, it absolutely makes it. It's just like, holy good night. And once again, that's part of the reason why I could not watch that track, or I could not watch that music video until I got into middle school, almost high school, because everything about that just captures your soul and just sends shivers down your spine, especially if you're like 3 or 4 years old watching that video. And Michael Jackson's transformation in that, oh, geez. But anyway, back to Beat It. So this track, Beat It, ended up being the most successful single off of the Thriller album after only one that we're going to get to in a second. And it's the reason that Michael Jackson got a call or got an invitation to the White House by Ronald Reagan at the time. It was actually because of the Beat It song and music video and its success. So, like I just mentioned a second ago, Beat It was the most successful single off of the Thriller album behind one single, Billie Jean. A song that, or I should say a track that everyone knows by the iconic bass line, which it is said at the time, Quincy Jones didn't like the long extended intro to the track, nor did he like that bass line. There was just something about it he just wasn't vibing with, but Michael said, keep it. And I'll tell you what Michael actually told them. He said, keep it because it made him want to dance. And Quincy said, anytime Michael says a beat or a song or something that makes him want to dance, conversation's over. There's no argument. You're keeping it. You're keeping that track. You're keeping that beat. You're keeping that song. But as good as the song was, it was sent into another stratosphere when Michael Jackson performed it live at Motown's 25th anniversary. It was in 1983 on NBC. This is the first time that he showcased the moonwalk, which he didn't create that dance. It is said that he actually went to Bobby Brown to learn how to do the dance, but Bobby Brown wasn't the one who created it either. It was a dance that was common. It was already common in the African American dance scene or whatnot, but he's the one who made it iconic because of that one performance. And that one performance on NBC was transcendent for me. I've watched it so many times because it was just, this was before I even really knew who Michael was. And my dad had recorded this on VHS. I mean, kids, ask your parents about what VHS is. But he recorded on his VHS tape, and I remember watching it, and I remember watching it so many times, and remember how my father was like enthralled by that, by that performance. And he really just recorded the whole Motown anniversary because, he grew up on that music, Marvin Gaye, all those iconic artists from the Motown sound and Motown records and things like that. And obviously, the Jackson 5, which, Michael was a part of. But no one could have ever expected Michael's performance to just really eclipse everything that occurred during that anniversary and on that show. The track is actually about the groupies that him and his brothers, Michael and his brothers, would encounter during that time, during the Jackson 5 when they were younger, and how some of them were very clingy, some of them were very obsessive and things. And Billie Jean is kind of talking about that experience. And in particular, one experience he had with a groupie who wrote him letters saying that her child was his son, even though he had never met the lady. He had never met this person. And eventually she would send him a letter in the mail with a gun and a picture of herself, advising him when to end his life, and at a time when to end his life so they can be in the afterlife together. Now, it goes without saying, she was eventually admitted into a psychiatric hospital. But yeah, it was experiences like that that fed into Michael creating the lyrics for Billie Jean. And like I spoke before, that bass line, that intro to the song is pretty much just as recognizable and iconic as the guitar strum riff when it comes to Beat It. And the video itself, though not as famous as his live performance on the Motown's 25th anniversary, the video itself had a little bit of history behind it. So check it out. MTV initially refused to air the video, claiming that black music didn't fit their rock-centered programming at the time. Hearing this, Michael threatened to remove all of his music and product off the air and expose MTV for being a channel that refused to play black music. MTV eventually relented, and when it went into heavy rotation, due to its popularity, it assisted Michael in selling an additional 10 million copies of his album. The song would eventually go on to be ranked as the 35th greatest music video in a list compiled by MTV at the end of the century. And just another side note, just 5 years later, after Michael Jackson forced MTV to relent and showcase the Billie Jean video, MTV would produce the program Yo! MTV Raps just 5 years later after they refused to air Billie Jean. Now, this next song on the album is my personal favorite. It's been sampled by SWV, Nas, Tupac, Chris Brown, Neo, Aaliyah, Blackstreet, and Ludacris. And that album is Human Nature. It's my personal favorite, mainly because it just has this vibe, this feel to it. And when you hear it, it just immediately transports you into New York City, and you're just walking at night, and it's just like it's just like a wistful track where you're just like walking around and you're feeling the vibes of New York City, and you feel like a lover in solitude, just thinking of the one he loves as he's just, going through the day and going through the night of walking along the streets of New York City. And interestingly enough, at first it wasn't going to be included until Quincy Jones just happened to accidentally hear a demo for it and he loved it. They reworked the lyrics a little bit because I believe, I don't have it listed here, so don't quote me on it, but I believe one of the artists of Toto actually wrote the lyrics for his daughter because of the experience his daughter had, because she was pushed at a playground by a boy, and he let her know that that boy actually probably had a crush on her. And that's the way he kind of expressed having a crush, because, they're little boys that, how it goes when you're kids and you have a crush on someone, you actually show them attention in not the best way. And the one who wrote it, I'm sorry I don't have it listed here, but the one who wrote the lyrics for Human Nature, just after explaining it to his daughter, he was just like, yeah, sometimes that's just human nature. But before moving on, I feel like Michael's inflection and delivery of the lyrics perfectly complement the production for Human Nature, which is part of the reason that just makes it my favorite track. The next track on the list is PYT, Pretty Young Thing, which Quincy actually had produced because of a dress his then wife had bought, that I think on the tag it said Pretty Young Thing. And he took that and he told the guys, hey, write lyrics based off of this. And I enjoyed Pretty Young Thing. mainly because of the chorus, PYT and then TLC, Tender Love and Care. But it's a nice jam. It's a nice track and whatnot. Not one of my favorites, but it's definitely catchy, and it has that off the wall vibe to it also. But then the next and final track on the album, I personally believe, is the greatest love song ever produced, period. And that's Lady of My Life. One of the reasons why it became the greatest love song of all times is while they were recording it, Quincy was talking to Michael, and Michael wasn't giving him the emotion. He wasn't giving him the energy that he needed to hear from him on this track. So he told Michael, he was just like, look, Michael, I need you to beg. I need to feel begging in your delivery of these lyrics. I need you to beg for it. I need you to beg for her. So Michael, hearing this, he said, okay. He instructed everyone in the studio to curtain him so no one could see him. Put curtains around, put blankets around, whatnot, so no one could see him because he didn't want to be self-conscious when it came to his performance. And after that, he ended up producing one of the greatest freestyles. No, not one of, the greatest freestyle in a love song of all time. Because if you go back and you listen to the song, the second half of the song is nothing but Michael Jackson ad-libbing and improvising the lyrics and the music on the looped version of the chorus in the background. That's all Michael. That is all him just coming up with stuff right off the top of his head. And the second half of this track is what makes it iconic and what makes it the greatest love song ever created. So simplistic and yet so beautiful because of Michael's performance. It's funny because I consider it the greatest love song of all time. It's not actually my favorite. It's not even actually in my top 10 favorite love songs of all time, but that's just a personal thing for me. But I cannot deny, as a production, no song on my list can beat it. So after Thriller came out, Michael's career went into another stratosphere. That's when he became a global icon. Once again, I already mentioned he went to the White House. This album went 34 times platinum. And not only that, but it influenced the music industry in a way that no other album has ever since. And it influenced musical artists such as Neo, Chris Brown, Usher, Justin Timberlake, The Weeknd, Kanye West, Beyonce, Bruno Mars, Rihanna. When it came to dance choreography, music video presentation, and the delivery of lines, you can hear a lot of Michael Jackson in the way Justin Timberlake does his inflection in songs. Same thing with Neo, same thing with The Weeknd, same thing with Chris Brown. You can hear Michael Jackson's influence in the way they present themselves and the way they deliver their lyrics in their songs. And Michael in general has arguably had the greatest influence on the music industry as a whole than any other artist in the history of music, in the history of the genre, in the history of the art across all genres. So those are just a few, I would say, of the reasons why Michael Jackson's Thriller is the greatest selling album of all time. And I consider it the greatest album ever produced of all time. You take Quincy Jones, you take Michael Jackson, you take Eddie Van Halen, you take artists from Toto at the time. If you don't know Toto, look them up. And you take the director from an American Teen Wolf in London, and you put all these things together with Michael's improvisation and just musical influence and pushing and creative verve and desire and tenacity. And you end up with an iconic 9-track album that has not been beaten since nor before. Now, having said that, it's ironic because I actually like Off the Wall better as an album, but I just can't deny the musical production of Thriller, even though Off the Wall is more of my vibe. All right, so that's it for this video. Once again, if you're interested in playing darts and you love the game of American football, my Southern Gridiron darts, that's a way to replicate a game of football while throwing darts. You can do it with friends. You can play against a computer. The information is down in the description below. You can also see me playing darts down in the description below for this video, link to this video. But that's it for this week. And as always, stay dirty.